I bet you didn't know that they're still using blackface in 2025. They've just changed the way it looked. Let's talk about what that means. Someone who has 30 years in government, I committed to helping underrepresented people in government. This channel is that promise being fulfilled. So a few weeks ago, as we were looking at federal workers getting fired from their jobs, I thought to myself, I couldn't imagine what it would be like to be used as a weapon. But then I thought, my entire life has been weaponized. And what I mean by that is looking at the Black identity and specifically being reduced to stereotypes, and specifically women. From the welfare queen to the angry Black woman to the DEI hire, right? We've been stereotypes. And while I knew those stories were never about me, and as I grew up, I started to learn and become educated that there were tools to serve someone else's agenda. And I knew that really our stories, or my stories, was one of resilience. But the challenge is when you hear a narrative and it's connected to Black faces, you don't automatically think Me Too. And that's the same for other underrepresented people too, even if you're experiencing similar circumstances. And I'll give you an example of that. So here's one example, and let's take, maybe she is undereducated, she is a white mother, she's unwed, she's raising her children, maybe she has limited resources, and she votes for candidates or policies that don't seem to be in her best interest, right? But she does that because she's being told that maybe it's immigrants or the reasons for her struggles. But the truth is that her challenges come from things like underfunded schools, right? Lack of affordable child care. Maybe the fact that she hadn't gotten a raise in years, no pay increase, or maybe she's not even working. But it's easy to blame people who, and especially people who are in the same socioeconomic class that you are. And then let's consider a family farm in Nebraska whose ancestors probably received land through the Homestead Act. This is a policy that excluded Black and indigenous people who lived here in the United States. And these people benefited from generations of opportunities, right? This group had been receiving government subsidies for years without ever having to confront the barriers that other Black farmers have faced for centuries. Now, for the past few weeks, they were coming on social media and they were asking, does anybody care about Nebraska? And they were asking this because of the potential that they might lose their farms. Again, they've been receiving government subsidies, but they didn't realize that they were DEI because it was never their faces attached to these narratives when it comes to someone taking from the system. I mean, think about it. When you think about any farm commercial that you've ever seen, what images come up? I know for me, it's been a sunset or sunrise, a tractor trailer, white people, family, horses. And with this kind of marketing propping you up, why would anybody equate you to the welfare queen and not the hardworking all-American family? And especially when no one has even questioned how your family for 250 years or 300 years even acquired the land in the first place. And then there's an Ivy League student scenario where maybe some upper class sophomore at an Ivy League university whose family has long benefited from going to elite education. This person might feel threatened by conversations about diversity and equity, and they're influenced from people like Jordan Peterson or Tucker Carlson, and they've been led to believe that their opportunities are being taken away because it's easy to make other people feel like that they are a victim. And the reality is, if you say something long enough, people will start to believe it, even if in their hearts they know it's not true, because the truth can be inconvenient. And in this content, we know that any conversation about equality has nothing to do with taking away this person's young future, but it's about ensuring that all young people who are not as fortunate as this person has a chance to build there. That's it. But those other people that I mentioned and other folks, they want to maintain a system of inequality, capitalize, so they traffic in fear, and in fact, that's how they're monetized. These stories are why others, and in this instance, this group did not know they were DEI. Because when you see a blackface attached to a narrative, you don't make the connection of Me Too. You see, this is about race, it is about gender, and it's always about power. It's about how the politics and the power of the weaponization of fear turns people against each other and turns us into pawns. It makes us afraid of each other. It makes us afraid of immigrants. It makes us afraid of people who seem different, who have a different lifestyle than us. It makes us not want to question our own reality or the reality that is being fed to us. And we really need to start questioning that and looking at that so we can start having discussions and so that we can start dismantling all of these narratives, and we need to start recognizing these and other narratives for what they are. And really, they are only tools for division. And then maybe we can start having some transparency and we can stop scapegoating other people and we can start to tear down and build a society where everyone's dignity is respected and all of our contributions are value. One of the things that many of these stories have in common is that they are told to gain power for somebody else, not us, right? And these stories have been very effective. And we are the collateral damage. I mentioned that my entire life is weaponized, and what I really mean is that this fictionalized version of these stories that has been sold to America of what it means to be a black woman in America, whether she's the angry black woman, right? I've lived it, and to some effect, I've been kind of angry about it. I want to talk about, for the last 2 or 3 years, I've really watched this narrative about the DEI story play out, and I've watched it play out in the media. So I want to talk about some people that I saw. Latondra Newton, she was the chief diversity officer at Disney. She stepped down. Janine English, she resigned from the Academy of Motion Pictures of Arts. I listened to this billionaire, Bill Ackman, accuse Claudine Gay. She was the first black woman president of Harvard. He called her a DEI hire, accused her of plagiarism and undermining her academic credentials and all her contributions. And these stories really hurt me to my core because I knew another narrative was being written about us for general consumption, right? And these women are only a few of what I'm going to call the sacrificial lamb. I've heard many of them, and they were sold to the public as DEI. And as I was listening to them, I thought to myself, who else are they going after? And why are they using this narrative, these people, to scapegoat, right? I also want to say too that this happens to all of us, all underrepresented group, both men and women. And when it happens to you, and especially if this happens to you at work, these are some of the things that you can do. One of the things that you can do, and this is very important, is keep a detailed record, the date, the time, record each incident, the location of where it happened. I know you didn't see this coming, but I want you to be descriptive of the incident. Write a detailed account of what happened. Include what was said, what was done, who was involved, any witnesses that was present. Talk about how the incident affected you emotionally, professionally, whatever you can write down. Talk about prior incidents, patterns of behavior, specific policies that were violated. An example of this might be on October, some day during a team meeting, my manager name referred to me as the DEI hire in front of colleagues. This comment made me feel undervalued and singled out. 2 co-workers, Jane Doe and John whatever, were present. And this is the third time this month that my qualifications have been questioned in a public setting. Use multiple formats, written notes. You want to keep a dedicated journal. You want to keep digital documents to record the incidents. But remember, the computer that you use at work, that don't belong to you. It does not belong to you. If the behavior occurs via email, you want to keep those. You want to save copies, transfer them to, your personal for safekeeping, right? If you have audio or you record conversations, just be sure to make sure that you look up the laws in your state and you have consent for recordings, right? You want to save any chats or logs or messages that demonstrate the behavior that indicates how you were treated. Performance reviews. If that behavior is affecting your performance reviews, you want to keep copies of those, and you want to note any discrepancies of biases, right? You also want to note policies of company policies, codes of conduct that violates those. But I would say in this culture that we're in now, I would leave other people out of it. And I would not expect people to come to your aid, testify on your behalf. I wouldn't have an expectation that other people would put their jobs on the line. So just be mindful of that. Report internally if it's safe to do so. You want to follow your company or your organization's procedures. Report it to HR or a supervisor, but follow your organizational's formal process, right? And provide them with your documentations, written reports, and submit any concerns in writings, but keep copies for yourself. And because you want to create a paper trail and then follow up if no action is taken. But it's important too that you know the laws of your state, because you could be working in an fire at will state. And then you want to seek legal advice. You want to talk to someone outside of your organization so that you know your rights and the options that you have. You want to talk to government agencies, maybe file a complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunities or any other government agencies. But you know what? I also want to talk about something that's happening. I have many friends right now who are not watching the news, and I totally understand that. And you may be experiencing this too, because they say, Beverly, it's just too painful. I can't watch what's going on. I'm protecting myself. I'm protecting my mental health right now. And watching the news is just too much for me, and I totally get that. And so if you're not watching the news, you may not know that this administration has, I don't want to say not made it illegal to discriminate. To file a discrimination lawsuit, but a lot of people are not picking up or taking cases based on discrimination because of something that this administration has put into place. I would advise you to Google that and to look that up. So if you're finding that people are not taking your cases, that may be why. There's no recourse. And as you know, a lot of agencies, government agencies in particular, has been fired and let go. That does not mean that you don't still document. That don't mean that you don't keep this information for yourself. I want to say this too. Stay off of social media. Too many people have lost their livelihoods going on these platforms, sharing when it wasn't safe for them to do so. And keep things close to your chest. You don't have to tell everybody everything, right? If you feel like you have to share, just don't do it publicly. Maintain these documents somewhere. Seek support. Listen, call us here at Raise the Bar Coaching and Consulting, and we can be a safe space for you. We are not legal at all. We can't do that. You are free to call for a complimentary call, and we welcome that because we are here to support you in some way. We want you to be successful, and that's why we are sharing this information with you. But we are not legal. We are not therapists at all, but we are definitely here to support you as we try to navigate this uncertainties and navigate your professional career. Now, let's talk about the federal workers and you public service workers in general. And if you're listening to this and you work in government, you probably don't want to be lumped in with the federal workers. And thank goodness a lot of them are coming back to work. But I want you to know that events never happen in a vacuum. And what happens to one group eventually happens to others. And that's why we always need to pay attention. We need to stay aware, and we collectively, we have to start becoming engaged. We have to start voting people out. And I know I hear a lot of folks say that voting does not matter. I'll say this, if voting didn't matter, I don't care what nobody's saying, they wouldn't be so hard pressed to marginalize us and take our votes away. So at every level, we need to start paying attention. But for now, I want to say when government shuts down and starts shutting down our safety nets, who pays the price for that? Well, it's not these politicians that are making the decisions, though eventually they need to suffer, and eventually they will, and that's going to be at the next elections. And it's not the commentators who are spinning these narratives, though if they are a woman and they call in another woman a DEI hire, believe me, it's coming for them too, because they're DEI. They just didn't know it. But right now it's the workers who show up to keep this country running. They become the weapons in what I'm going to call a class war, because their livelihoods and all of our livelihoods are being threatened. Our rights are literally being thrown away, and these workers right now are being used to push an agenda. And so when that happens, it really becomes about all of us. Politics become a weapon, and people are the ammunition. It's about job loss and lost in our institutions, right? And then our way of life becomes threatened, and then it becomes about survival. And when it becomes about survival, we're all in danger. When fear is weaponized, it divides us, it controls us, and it keeps us from seeing our shared humanity. So let's talk about this, the politics of weaponizing fear and how it works and why it's so effective and what we can do to combat it. So we know that fear is one of the most powerful tools in politics, and it's been used for centuries to control populations, to justify wars, and to silence people. But how does it work, and why is it so successful? They keep using it because it's effective, right? And fear taps into our most primal instinct. It makes us feel vulnerable and uncertain and unsafe. And as we know, when we're afraid, we're likely to accept solutions, and even the bad one, like, quite frankly, voting for this administration. And that's why politicians keep using fear to push their agenda. These people, they create a problem, they stoke our fears about it, and then they offer themselves as a solution. For example, what did this president say? DEI made the planes fall from the sky. What the heck does that even mean? And how can 3 letters scare so many people? Well, I'll tell you how in this instance, right? Well, you attach a black woman to it. You bring it up, you bring up an event, you demonize it, you repeat it over and over again, and each time you show a black face. And you do it so often that even the person showing you those images, they don't even realize that they've diverse themselves. You pay people to say stupid things like, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. Meanwhile, the truth is simple. We are all unique individuals. But you convince the masses, people who are consumers and who need to be afraid, and just like that, they're scared. But I'll tell you something, diversity happens to be one of my favorite words. And here's a little fact that you all know. Blades of grass look similar, but each one has slight variations in shape and size and genetic structures. We all know that no stars are exactly alike, right? They differ in size, temperature, brightness, and composition. And snowflakes are famous for their uniqueness. Each star forms with distinct crystals and structures. And so we know that even twins are diverse in their own way, identical twins. So none of us are the same, and we were all meant to be different, and that's okay. So how do we stop this weaponization of fear and division? Well, first we need to recognize it for what it is. And good grief, we've seen this before and we see it over and over again. And so when you hear a commentator pushing this agenda, just question it. Ask yourself, who is benefiting from this narrative? What is there to be afraid of? And who wants me to be afraid? And why? Does what I'm hearing match the environment that I'm experiencing right now? Second, we need to demand better for ourselves. We need to hold the people that we've elected accountable, because leadership isn't about exploiting fear. It's about crafting an honest vision about the future, and it's about speaking truth to power. It's about working together to solve these problems. Oh my gosh, I wish we can removing big money and corporations from politics. Third, y'all, we need to build and strengthen our communities, because its solidarity is one of the most powerful tools that we can use to combat division. And here's how you can start to empower yourself, right? You can join professional associations. So find one that closely aligns with, who you are and who you are trying to grow into, right? One that aligns with your personal vision and mission. Go to conferences, something that's going to provide career advancement opportunities for you. And here's the third one. And this one is kind of personal. I'm kind of talking to myself too. We are living in a little bit of different times, but don't let these people take your joy away from your life. So maintain a sense of yourself and balance that with some laughter and fun, and surround yourself with people that lift you up. Find spaces that make you laugh, right? I'm going to be honest. I don't know if or when we're going to get out of this mess, but in the meantime, I'm going to use this channel as a place to share our underrepresented stories. I'm going to use it to lift all of us up, to hold a space for good for you, to redefine leadership and your image, to challenge you to find something that aligns with you, because together I believe we can manifest a better world, not just for us, but for future generations, for all generations, regardless of who you are. Ultimately, I believe in our ability to rise above division. I believe that we can reject these harmful narratives and create a world where no one is used as a weapon. And I know that we won't agree, but I also want us to revisit some universal tenets, and I chose 3. Hate is unacceptable because every individual deserves dignity and respect, regardless of race, religion, gender, background, sexual orientation. No person is above the law. Justice applies to everyone equally, and it should. Truth and facts matter. Bring back science and listen to these podcasts as entertainment. Even me, take some nuggets, right? Research it. Remember who we are. We are not pawns. We are not weapons. We are people with agency, and together we have the power to demand better for ourselves, for our communities, and really for this planet. Here's a little side note. If other people want to go to Mars, let them go. I wish they would go today. But seriously, at the beginning of this video, I mentioned that I've watched our image be used to tell stories that weren't ours. And people did so without our permission or consent, but we always knew the truth. Those stories, they don't define us. They never did. They don't tell the breadth of who we are. And the reality is that there always will be someone who want to tell stories about us, but we are so much more. You are so much more than the stories that they try to impose on us, right? We're not pawns in a political game. We are complex, resilient, and we are powerful. And when we come together, we can rewrite the story. We can live the story better than any marketing firm could ever tell. So let's stop letting others weaponize our lives with their narrative of lies and fears. Let's stop accepting leadership that sees us as tools instead of human beings. And let's demand better for ourselves. And again, let's do it for ourselves, and let's do it for the next generation. I want you to know that you are not alone. And I'm really trying to grow this channel. I want this channel to be a voice for good. I want our government to be representative of the country that we live in. You are our future. And know that when I refer to the government, I'm not referring to elected official, but I'm talking about hardworking people that work in government spaces, right? The people who really count, for the people that provide the services for the government, right? For us. Because I don't want to live, although we might already do, for the United States of fill in the blank corporation. So let's push back on that narrative. And if you're down with that, please like this video, share it, comment, and subscribe to this channel. And I'm going to start setting some goals. And the first goal that I'm going to set is to get to 1,500 subscribers. And so I'm going to ask you to help me get there by watching it all the way through and do all that other stuff. And I also want you to set some goals for yourself and comment and share in the channels. All right, y'all. RTVCC, I'm out.